Arc Raiders has 24 weapons to choose from and no shortage of debate on which is the best.
I should be safe if you want to. Oh my god, you're a goat.
So yesterday, I decided to find out the answer. And honestly,
my bad.
I'm a little shocked. While there are certainly other weapons that everyone loves to argue about, the debate really centers around two. One is named for a symbol anyone with a kindergarten education can identify, and the other for a gas giant where, according to schoolyard saying, is where girls go. The Harvester was tilling up the somehow lush and fertile soils of Spaceport, so that's where I went. I started with the Jupiter because, honestly, I've used it the least out of the god-tier legendary guns for one simple reason. I never get any cores when I use it. Okay, that animation is cool though. It was, but animations don't do damage, which is what I was going to be measuring. You can already see from the $60,000 dangling over my right shoulder that I was running 2 of them, and there's a good reason for that. The rest of my loadout was comprised mostly of batteries and arc power cells that somehow, by video game alchemy, had transformed themselves into energy ammo, 2 emergency wolf packs, roughly $15,000 worth of heals and shield rechargers, a snap hook, a deadline, binoculars, so I could get amazing shots of emotes I had never seen before in my life. Wait, what was that? And a cloaking device because I had a feeling this was gonna get sketchy. It did, but not exactly the way I thought. The reason I had 2 Jupiters was pretty simple. First and most importantly, I wanted to flex on everyone else in the lobby because nothing says new money quite like wearing 2 giant kill me signs over your shoulder. The second was slightly more pragmatic. Because I've used the Jupiter so infrequently, I'm not the best with it. I guess at least not at this point of the raid. Shocking, I know. If I die here, I delete this entire YouTube channel, so you better subscribe before it's gone. Thankfully, for me at least, I was able to turn the final Hornet into a double amputee and watch it make like a protesting monk and self-immolate. But the entire sequence put me on edge. This thing is supposed to be one of the best guns in the game. I mean, it does have that one crazy perk, I guess. It was time to lock in. The Jupiter is about as close as Arc Raiders comes to a hit scan sniper rifle, which is probably the main reason I'm usually damage rich but core poor every single time I dust it off. There really isn't much of a reason to get close enough to smell what I imagine is the Queen's incredibly bad breath, but this raid I was gonna try to do something I basically never do. Get the ball and steal all of its contents. Where the fuck is she? If I was ballsy enough to turn myself into a giant rat bait station and ego chow one of the most dangerous enemies in the game with a sniper rifle, I wanted to make sure it was worth it. Plus, I wanted to know how often the Equalizer and Jupiter blueprints spawn, not in the Harvester puzzle, but in the giant loot-filled soccer ball she drops on her death. At this point, I was still pretty bullish that the Equalizer was going to win, but if you're noticing some surprising damage scores popping up on the left side, that's because the Jupiter has something no other gun in the game has. It completely ignores armor. Look, I thought the Equalizer was going to run away with this, but now I'm not so sure. Which is helpful because when it comes to armor, the Queen is morbidly obese. She doesn't have the hordes of Leapers, Bastions, and Bombardiers there to protect her. All she has is, if you're lucky, a Rocketeer to keep her company, or if you're unlucky, a Vaporizer. Either way, she needs all the help she can get because everyone brings their biggest booms to fight her. And things were going pretty well for me over in my quaint 1-bed, 1-bath far off the battlefield, which allowed me time to ask a very important question. Does a Jupiter have damage fall off? I suppose we should find out, shouldn't we? At least half of the armor plating protecting her core was already blasted off, so while I needed to make some moves to get in range for my potential loot run, I was generally content to sit back and lob incredibly damaging sniper rounds directly into her abdomen. Pew pew pew! But of course, nothing ever quite goes according to plan. I'm not sure exactly why the Rocketeer's programming always dictates it shows up at the most inopportune time, but if I know the comment section on this channel, and I definitely do, oh, of course it comes this way. I'm sure you guys have some ideas. Either way, I now had to take a forced detour from my damage spree to deal with this threat, and honestly, the Jupiter did incredibly well. Also, speaking of comments, I'm sure there have already been a few of you that have typed out, "Sally, you know you're wasting energy ammo by reloading before you have an empty mag." And yes, while I appreciate your concern, I brought enough energy ammo to arm the entire lobby. So honestly, I wasn't all that concerned with that. I was maximizing for damage and time. So when the Rocketeer finally went down, wow, that was easy. It was naturally time to make things just a little bit harder. No, not... You get what I mean. The rest of the lobby was sitting around lobbing anvil shots, and I suppose that guy was thinking about throwing his one singular wolf pack, but every 5 rounds I was racking up somewhere between 1300 and 1800 damage, which will be important to remember in a few seconds. Sorry, I should say that was my damage score. You guys have rightfully pointed out the damage score is actually double the damage, but unless you've been keeping a running tab, that's the best I can do at the moment.
Yo, what's up?
The only official damage comes at the end of the raid, which was approaching faster than I had thought. It's time to make plays. But first I needed not to die. That was much easier back in my early studio apartment, but with the whole lobby now throwing wolfpacks and whatever small arms fire the other loot goblins were using, they had angered the lady from The Crown on Netflix, which usually is fine because I had more firepower than an arsonist. Sorry, my dog is drinking water. That's that noise you might have heard. She always does this right when I'm recording, so anyway. What I didn't have was the power to stop the stomp.
Look, I want to get up there and test it, but I don't know if there's a way to not get pulverized.
Actually, there is, and it would help me answer one of the biggest questions I had about this gun. You guys told me to hit jump in the last video, so here it goes. There is only one spot on the entire map that's safe from the Queen's royal but incredibly large footprint, and that's directly where her crown should be. And since she still had the hard part of her skull remaining, this turned out to be an amazing anatomical case study. I would be able to see if barrel stuffing the core with the most powerful sniper rifle in the game would do any more damage than shooting it from 150 meters away. With the Americans, that is 1.5 football fields, roughly. I was able to get approximately 2 very unsatisfying bites of the metaphorical apple, oh fuck me, until I was cast out from the Garden of Eden and faced with a choice. She was about to make like Goku and go Super Saiyan on my ass, so my only real shot at surviving was to hope my snap hook had just enough juice to get me back up top. How am I alive? Would be a question I would ask repeatedly in the next raid, but in the moment wasn't that important because if I didn't heal, I wouldn't be. I should have recharged my shield, and I'm sorry if that's causing some of you anxiety, but there was no way this thing was going to beat out the Equalizer if I didn't get right back to blasting. The damage part here is genuinely confusing too, because if you remember a few minutes back, I was hitting for somewhere between 300 and 500 damage per shot. Up here, where you would expect the damage to be more, it started around 300, but then slowly worked its way up to the mid 500s. My only guess is that something was up with the hit registration, which you would think wouldn't be an issue with the hit scan sniper rifle, or the game is broken and nothing matters. I would have loved to stick around and test this some more, but well, that's incredibly disappointing. It was unfortunately time for me to leave.
Queen core, I'm manifesting it. That is unlucky. Bummer.
Yeah, it would actually work out like super well for me. My ass in the lawn chair and my toes in the sand, I was just racking up as much damage as I could, which again, I can't emphasize how much more damage the Jupiter was doing than I thought when I got lit on fire, hit with some random projectile of unknown origin, and tactically retreated inside the harvester. While this little detour did cost me roughly 1500 damage score, it would lead to something I have done only 3 times in my 100+ queen raids. Right as I was done using an herbal bandage, the queen let out her final queef and dropped the most valuable sphere in the game directly on top of my head. In total, I successfully dodged a child requesting cores and waddled out of there with 3 queen cores, 3 complex gun parts, a Jupiter blueprint, and a damage score that only 1 gun in the game had any chance of beating.
Were you looking for a queen core? Sorry, I don't have any.
Yeah, just subtract that from my damage.
The game is actually going to do that for us at the end of the raid, but the score to beat was a whopping 30,352 points of damage. I had just made a new investment in an astronaut suit because I'm a big believer in the feel good, play good mantra, and after a spawn that would have sent most raiders back to the exfil, it was time to put it all to the test. And so it begins. If it's legal to use a gun metaphor to describe another gun,
believe it or not, jail.
Here's how I would describe the two. The Jupiter is an intercontinental ballistic missile. It's best handled from a distance. The Equalizer is like a hand grenade, because if you're too far away, it's not going to do a whole lot. So it was important that I established my dominance and spent as much time on top of the Queen as possible, as a long-distance relationship I'd found myself in wasn't going to cut it. Did I just hear a vaporizer? We would front-load the bad luck this raid. While the other half of the lobby was busy fighting over legs and cores, myself and 2 quiet and antisocial roommates were now sheltering in place. But instead of wasting an entire raid huddled in fear, I decided to just, this is going to be very satisfying, blow it up. All you have to do is wait for that pesky shield to come down, and the vaporizer really isn't that scary. Okay, let's party. This would be a very weird party. I took my Smurf suit to the only place where it's possible to get a year's salary worth of damage and immediately clocked in for my shift. The raid was already 7 minutes old at this point, but I didn't really see any other big guns on the map, so I figured there was still plenty of damage to be had, and I was right. Oh, that's a big number. It definitely was, but as the ancient Chinese proverb says, big numbers usually mean the queen gets annoyed, and even though you're thematically dressed for the map you're playing, eventually she will throw you into the ground, so you better not get greedy. Try to get back up because you're filming a YouTube video and you want the Equalizer to win, because if you do, you're gonna have a bad time. It was a rough translation, okay? While he wasn't in full costume, I want to give a shout out to Cosmo Crazy for being an absolute legend and, without any prompting by me, patched up my spacesuit with this fancy blue spray paint.
That's incredibly kind. Thank you.
Yes, I know it is Vita Spray. The contrast in playstyle required to use both of these guns is not lost on me. Home sweet home. And I'd like to make a recommendation on which one could work best for you before we get to the whole damage thing. You've already seen how the Jupiter performs at range and up close. And if you're still watching this video, which I hope you are, and the left side of the screen, you're obviously seeing how the Equalizer is doing. This is actually going to come down to the wire. While there's definitely an element of danger to using and losing both of these guns, they come from two very different places. With the Jupiter, you're more likely to be hanging around the edges, far away from the herd, and your most likely cause of death is from someone who presents as friendly, but really identifies as a rat.
Oh, she's getting close.
The Equalizer, though, requires a more intimate type of involvement to really be effective. And if you're able to navigate the Rocketeer or Vaporizer, the most likely 911 call you'll be making is because you got bucked off the queen and pounded into the sand. Which is where my story would have ended if I didn't possess the reflexes of a cat. No shot I'm getting stomped to death this raid. Let's go. I mean, you never know, right? With each mag, I'd been consistently racking up damage scores with a comma, so it wasn't surprising the queen was almost dead, which left me with only 3 big questions. Did I kill the queen too quickly? What was my damage score? And could I pull off a miracle and somehow get the contents of the Great Ball into my backpack for a second raid in a row? This part was actually becoming much easier, and if I'm honest, is one of my biggest takeaways from this raid. Standing on top and then jumping down just as the queen explodes seems to be a surefire way to get all of the goodies. But before I could get to exfil and my damage total, I had to account for the sins of denying a little boy a queen core.
I need a core, bro. I need a core.
You need the Jupiter blueprint?
I need a core. I need a one core. Bro.
Have fun.
Oh, thank you.
I hope everyone is happy now. With my act of charity done and my conscience clear, there was only one thing left to do. There's been plenty of upsets in sports history, but I'm not sure I was emotionally prepared for this one. Not only did the Jupiter win, it absolutely destroyed the Equalizer. So I guess we finally have our answer on the best gun in Arc Raiders.